Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Wednesday, December 24th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. In 2025, the KVPR news team was busy bringing you stories from the Central Valley.
This year, we had a number of music features, a mariachi composition summer program in Fresno, a Madera music teacher who also publishes Latin jazz sheet music,
and so much more. Coming up, with 2026 just days away, we'll take a look back and discuss the moments that shaped the year. But first, these headlines. Emergency rooms in Fresno County are reporting a rise in respiratory illnesses this holiday season. The Fresno County Department of Public Health says there are also high patient volumes at hospitals. The department's asking residents to get up to date on their flu and COVID vaccines and to stay home if they're sick. Residents are also asked to evaluate their options instead of showing up to an emergency room during the surge. A new California law that makes it a misdemeanor or felony to threaten violence against schools, workplaces, daycares, churches, or hospitals takes effect on January 1st. Previously, someone had to be specifically named in a threat for it to be considered a crime. Cap Radio's Gerardo Zavala reports.
Democratic State Senator Susan Rubio authored the bill. She says false threats cost taxpayers thousands of dollars annually.
Every incident, we cannot afford to be spending nearly $100,000 sending in the SWAT team, the police, and then it turns out to just be a joke. So these are dire times.
The law passed with broad bipartisan support, including from Republican State Senator Marie Alvarado-Gil, who changed parties last year over disagreements on crime policies.
These threats of violence in our schools and places of worship are everyday occurrences, and more our teachers and staff members, children, families are wondering whether or not they're going to make it home safe.
Some critics argue the new law will disproportionately affect young students who often make these threats. But Sergeant Amar Gandhi with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office says actions have consequences.
I don't care if it's a 16-year-old calling in a bomb threat. Guess what? We're still going to take it seriously. We don't have time or the luxury of dismissing this thing because what if it's true? So there's consequences to all this where this kid needs to have some sort of punishment and consequence.
Gandhi says false threats pull officers away from real emergencies. In Sacramento, I'm Gerardo Zavala.
Alphabet, the parent company of Google, says they plan to buy a startup behind a massive battery storage project in western Fresno County. Alphabet announced earlier this week it plans to purchase the company called Intersect. Intersect has renewable energy projects in Texas and California. That includes a solar farm being built in Fresno County that's considered the world's largest battery energy storage system. The move signals the growing need for electricity by tech companies as they evolve in the race to develop artificial intelligence. Californians could see more and taller apartments developed near public transit stations starting in 2026. That's under a new law taking effect January 1st that allows denser housing, some as tall as 75 feet, to be built next to metro, light rail, and some bus stops, regardless of local zoning rules. Democratic State Senator Scott Wiener of San Francisco authored the bill, and he argued that housing built near transit is necessary not only to boost the state's housing stock.
We also need to support our public transportation systems, and this will help do that. And we need to give people options other than driving. And the way to do that is to make it easier for them to live near public transportation.
The new law faces opposition from a swath of local governments who argue that it'll trample local zoning laws and transform some single-family home neighborhoods. One of those cities, Los Angeles, is evaluating legal action to delay the new law's implementation. President Donald Trump's efforts to restrict immigration may be having a profound impact on California. The San Francisco Chronicle is out with a new analysis looking at immigration trends in the state, and it found that the flow of immigrants into California has been cut in half compared to last year. The decline of people immigrating into the state was seen across most counties, but the Central Valley saw one of the largest drops in net migration. In Fresno County, for example, net migration is down by 93% compared to 2024.
KVPR enters 2026 as a 100% community-supported service. Make a year-end gift to support programs like this one for the next year. Donate now at kvpr.org or on the KVPR app.
And now to our main story. It's hard to believe 2026 is just a matter of days away, and it is hard to overstate what a big year this has been, for good and for bad. We lost some legends like Jane Goodall and Diane Keaton. The fires in LA devastated thousands of homes. Many people were fired or furloughed when Elon Musk's now defunct Department of Government Efficiency slashed federal funding, and many immigrants are still living in fear of raids under a second Trump administration. Now, there were also some notable cultural moments, though. Taylor Swift got engaged. Saturday Night Live celebrated 50 years. An all-female crew went to space. And who could forget Kendrick Lamar's Bell Bottoms at the Super Bowl halftime show? Yes, this all happened in the last year. And while some things like the word tariff will probably follow us into the new year, today we're going to take a moment to chat with KVPR's editors to take a local look back at 2025. Today, I'm speaking with our news director, Crescencio Rodriguez Delgado, and associate editor, Carrie Klein, to break down some of the year's most memorable stories. Hey, Cress. Hey, Carrie.
Hey, Liz.
Hello.
Okay, so Cress, let's start with you. I thought you could give us an overview of some of the top local stories in the news cycle in 2025, and maybe even cover a few national moments I neglected to mention that also had some local impacts that we covered.
Yeah, so much news happened this year. I'll try to be brief. Famous last words.
Yes.
We'll start at the beginning of 2025. At that time, as we all know, we were anticipating the second Trump administration. And what was the big promise he made during the campaign was that he would launch the largest domestic deportation operation in the country's history. And so even before he was inaugurated, a big story that broke in January was when Border Patrol agents conducted a raid in Kern County. So that sent shockwaves right away across the region because it felt like what the president had promised was becoming reality. And so, and that happened even before he was in office, I should say. So obviously in the months since the raid, we learned so much about what happened in Kern County. And not only that, but these raids have expanded to other regions in the state and the country. So locally, there were protests against the immigration enforcement actions, and these have also been happening across the country. Mm-hmm. And so speaking of protests, another big story this year, we also saw the mass protests when millions of people took part in these so-called No Kings rallies. This is all in response to President Trump again, and what many people feel is his governing style that resembles that of a king. Earlier this year, KVPR covered No Kings rallies in Merced, Fresno, and Bakersfield, but there were also protests in so many other Valley cities that we couldn't get to. I don't remember seeing this high turnout for a single protest at a single time. So that obviously made headlines. This was also a big political year, and one moment that we will all remember probably for a long time is the political assassination of the conservative activist Charlie Kirk when he was speaking at a college in Utah.
Yeah.
So Kirk had just been in Visalia 1 week before he was assassinated, and he was speaking at a church on the issue of pro-life and family. I think his assassination not only ignited questions about political violence this year, but also it surfaced the intersecting issues of politics and religion. So, that's something that will continue to be a story for our times.
Yeah.
And just quickly, some other news of note was Medicaid cuts. That has also reignited the debate over healthcare in the country. I suppose that debate has never really ended, but here in the Valley, a lot of people rely on Medicaid. So this is a question going forward about what will happen to people's healthcare. This year, we also had the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. So, there was a lot of politics going around about who is to blame and all of that. But what we did here at KVPR was we tried to contact elect every member of the House in our region. And that was largely an effort by our producer, Jonathan Linden, who managed to secure interviews with most of the members of Congress who represent the San Joaquin Valley from both parties. The only one we weren't able to speak to was Republican David Valadeo from Kern County. We have made multiple attempts to get a sit-down interview with him on multiple topics, but that just hasn't happened. Hopefully in the new year.
Yeah.
But I think having those elected officials share their views on the shutdown was super helpful for our listeners so that they know where things stood back in Washington. So that was another big news moment that we navigated.
Okay, and Carrie, now you largely edit the local features that listeners hear on the podcast as well as our broadcast. So I thought first you could maybe give us a quick explanation about what makes a good feature and just how that's a little bit different from other reporting folks here. And then tell us about a few memorable features this year.
Yeah, so feature stories are the longer, more in-depth stories that both reporters and listeners can really sink their teeth into. Usually a feature is a topic that's more nuanced and requires more sources, more people to sort of suss out what's important or interesting or controversial. Also, some stories become features if they have the potential for really nice sound and a really nice immersive listening experience. And so this year we had a number of music features, a mariachi composition summer program in Fresno, a Madera music teacher who also publishes Latin jazz sheet music. We got to profile local business owners who are keeping Dia de los Muertos traditions alive. We attended a star party in Kerman. We also investigated rising legal fees at the State Center Community College District and talked to beekeepers who lost significant numbers of bee colonies last winter. We explored politics like Proposition 50 and the pressure campaign to keep, again, South Valley Congressman David Valadeo from voting against cutting Medicaid. And then just recently, we covered the expansion of Fresno's Yosemite International Airport. And stay tuned for reporting that we've been putting together on the Valley's economy.
Okay, so a wide range of topics. Now, Cress, you help get a lot of our news stories, including features, out on social media. We actually had some pretty viral moments this year, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. That was fun to see because it tells us how our listeners are engaging with us online. KVPR had a tough year, obviously. As everyone knows, the federal government defunded public media. That raised a question about whether this was the end of public media and all of that. But as tough as the year was on that front, it was also a year where we got innovative and we tried to ramp up our online presence to better serve our audience. And that means bringing stories in different ways on new platforms like TikTok and in new formats like video. One of those stories was the story of a Fresno intersection that seems to be one of the most dangerous intersections, apparently. Our reporter, Samantha Rangel, looked into the phenomenon surrounding the so-called Friant Roulette. That's what people in Fresno call the intersection of Friant and Shepherd because it is a crash central, apparently. A whole YouTube page is dedicated to live streaming that intersection now. And that story, when Samantha Rangel put it together, it went viral on our TikTok platform, which we just launched this year.
Yes.
So, and other stories that went super viral this year was when we reported on a land bank deal that the state conducted. It turns out that the state had turned over 17,000 acres of land back to the Tule River Indian tribe. That was a very, very viral moment for us on Instagram in particular. At last check, we had 33,000 likes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, on that post on Instagram. So
it's a lot for us.
Oh yeah, and so hooray for the power of social media and getting stories out there. And I guess I'll just take this moment to plug our social media in case someone listening isn't following us yet. We are on TikTok and on Instagram with the username @kvpr.news. So please look for us and follow us. If you follow us there, you'll see the latest news each week through a new product that we also developed this year where we bring you a weekly wrap of the news. And of course, we're also on Facebook and on the podcast platforms.
Yeah. Okay, I wanted to speak really quick, Cress, about breaking news because we had a couple situations this year where news broke, and that always creates a bit of chaos in the newsroom. So when you think of 2025 and sort of key moments where news broke, how did you respond in the moment? I think people would be curious to know, and just some memorable moments over the past year.
Yeah, I know. Breaking news can throw a newsroom into chaos for sure. And being as small as the team as we are here at KVPR, I mean, you have to really, everybody gets into gear and we all, it's all hands on deck when there's breaking news. I'll say one example was when we heard of the Charlie Kirk shooting. Even though it had happened in a different state, considering Charlie Kirk's national recognition, and he had just been in the Valley, our producer Jonathan Linden actually was able to find a source who could share with us about Kirk, somebody local who had known him and worked with him through the organization that Kirk ran, which is Turning Point USA. So we were able to have a voice to present in the news in that moment, and news that was happening. It was national news, and we kept updating that story as the days and the weeks went on through different interviews as well, and also reporting on how the local community was responding. We also, of course, devote a lot of time to making sure we bring a full picture when big news happens. I recall the election day when you, Liz, and myself and Jonathan were here on election night when we were waiting for results on Proposition 50, the proposal to gerrymander congressional districts here in California. We were here all night analyzing results and putting together an episode of Central Valley Daily. Sometimes it's really easy to predict the news based on, election day and all that kind of stuff. Other times it's not. So we have to be ready to get hit with something when we least expect it sometimes.
Totally. It's part of the job.
Yeah.
Carrie, looking ahead, I'm curious what's on the docket in the new year in terms of in-depth stories that you think KVPR reporters will produce, and also just what stories you're following.
Yeah, well, we have a lot in the pipeline already, like a couple of in-depth investigations that we're looking to publish early in the new year. I can't give any other details, but they're topics that involved months and months of reporting and lots of documents obtained through public records requests. Another topic, universal transitional kindergarten, rolled out in recent years, and we're going to be examining how that process has been going and how children have benefited from it. We're going to have an in-depth look at how economics have evolved in Fresno over the last 2 decades, and we'll be revisiting Proposition 50 and other political races as the midterm elections approach. And of course, we're going to continue reporting on the local effects of changes made by the Trump administration, particularly immigration and economics.
Yeah, a lot of these stories have a long tail. There's a lot of follow-ups to be done. Cress, what stands out to you as some memorable moments in the KVPR newsroom in the last year?
Well, I guess to encompass it, I would say the public media defunding issue was one of the biggest moments for our newsroom. Sure. Because this was a government decision that directly affected us. I mean, our station lost funding, and that is never good because it affects everything from our operations to our staffing and everything. But have we been able to get back on our feet and keep going? Of course we have. And in this time, we have been able to manage to still cover the news and still bring, programming and really think innovatively, as I mentioned earlier. In this time, we've also been able to successfully complete a full year of this podcast.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. A lot of that success, obviously, due to our producer, Jonathan, and the teamwork that we have been able to keep going here to do what has it been, like more than 300 episodes of this podcast?
Yes, a lot of interviews and daily reporting.
Yeah, so our listeners have been there with us. They were there with us all year. They really came in full force to show their support for the newsroom through this whole defunding issue and for the station in general. We witnessed that support even at our events when we went out just recently. We were in Bakersfield, and a lot of our listeners were just the main question, hey, what's going to happen with the station? Well, with your support, listener, we are able to still be here. People really want their public radio station to stick around, and this is a service to them. And so thanks to God, we are still able to broadcast and serve our audience because people rely on public media.
Absolutely. Okay, we have to look ahead, and I know we don't have a crystal ball here. If only we did. But I have to ask you both what you expect 2026 to hold. I mean, we couldn't have expected everything in 2025, but give us your best shot. Let's start with you, Carrie.
Yeah, so I think we've mentioned a lot of it so far. I think politics will continue to change a mile a minute under the Trump administration. And of course, while we don't, necessarily cover federal politics specifically, so many of those policies will continue to have ripple effects, here in this region. What comes to mind, are things that we've mentioned already: healthcare costs, immigration, economics, things like that. Also, interestingly, oil drilling is increasing in Kern County next year. That's going to be interesting stories lately. Also, the Fresno Roman Catholic Diocese filed for bankruptcy earlier this year and are facing a lot of lawsuits, and I think that's going to be something interesting to follow as well.
Okay, what about you, Chris?
Well, 2026 is a midterm election year, so buckle up. You have been warned. Likewise, I think we will see the next phase of immigration enforcement. I think the big story of the year nationally was immigration and all of that. That's a very local issue as well. And I think just generally speaking, the Valley is going through a lot of changes. So we will definitely keep an eye out for how cities continue to work on projects, and address the local matters. Just to give a few examples, in Porterville, residents are trying to get a new library up and running. It burned a couple years ago. In Fresno, residents are actively pushing back on efforts to expand the city with new housing developments. In Kern County, there are still questions about health budget cuts that have had an impact on the community. And in Merced, just recently, we learned that President Trump has entered the political fray by endorsing a challenger to a vulnerable House Democrat up there. So lots to see and report on in the new year.
Lots to keep busy, of course. KVPR's news director, Crescencia Rodriguez Delgado, and associate editor, Carrie Klein, thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, thank you.
And a reminder to listeners, if any of these features or stories piqued your interest, you can always find them on our website. Just go to kvpr.org. And a heads up, the KVPR news team will be scaling back our operations for the rest of the year, but we will still be here every day with some special encore episodes. So listen to some of our most memorable conversations, including the one that scored Central Valley Daily our first Society of Professional Journalists Award. Episodes will drop daily at their usual time, and we will be back with you in 2026 with a fresh episode on Monday, January 5th. Until then, happy holidays to you and yours from the KVPR news team. We are very grateful that you listen and wish you nothing but good things as we close out this year. And that is today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
How does AI even work? Where does creativity come from? What's the secret to living longer? TED Radio Hour explores the biggest questions with some of the world's greatest thinkers. They will surprise, challenge, and even change you. Listen to NPR's TED Radio Hour wherever you get your podcasts.